Hi, welcome, Matty, and thanks for agreeing to come on the Break Even podcast. Just want to start off with your football career. You joined Tottenham in 2000 and left to join West Ham in 2003. What was that like for you going from West Ham to Tottenham?
Yeah, it's difficult. Didn't have the best time at Tottenham. Played around 40 or 50 games, but yeah, it wasn't the best experience for me. You don't always have brilliant experiences within your career, and that was one that was difficult for a multitude of reasons. But making the trip over to West Ham, obviously being a former Tottenham player, wasn't an easy transition. So the fans took some winning over, to say the least. But I felt like, especially in my first season, I got Hammer of the Year. It went well, and I had a really good relationship with the fans in the end.
Great. In 2009, when Zola was in charge, there was a rumour going around about you having a gambling problem, and then eventually he sold you. How was that for you, and what sort of happened there?
Yeah, so I was probably right in the eye of the storm, so to speak, in terms of my gambling. It really come on top. And to be fair to Gianfranco Zola, obviously a Premier League legend, it's probably one of the main regrets I have in my career is that I think he knew about my gambling, but he also liked me as a player. He wanted me to play in a different position, inverted a little bit. I was always a winger that was out on the touchline and getting at my fullback, but he wanted me to play inside. And he took some time and care, because I was struggling with my back a little bit at the time, to try and get me into yoga. He'd pull me in sessions and say, this is what he wants from me. He'd work on free kicks and corners of myself. He put a lot of time into me. But at that time, I was so... I was in the height of my addiction. I didn't really take heed of what he was saying. I didn't appreciate the time that he was putting into me. And in the end, I think Gianfranco washed his hands with it, which I probably would have done the same. Now I'm in coaching myself, So he needed to think about him and the team and how he's going to move forward with West Ham and make the best of his opportunity. And I wasn't the person to do that. So that's when I moved on to Stoke.
And when you were at Stoke, was it Tony Pulis, the manager, I think? Was he aware of your gambling problem?
He was, yeah, but I told a little white lie. It was right at the end of I moved to Stoke in 2009, and it was right at the end of my addiction, albeit it was still really bad. My rock bottom phase, so to speak. So, yeah, I told a little white lie. I joined in January, and I didn't actually stop till the September that year.
Right.
So he was aware of the problem. He used the analogy of Battersea dog homes, and they can't go to Crufts and buy the best dogs. They've got to go to the homes, etc. And I came with baggage, and he took a gamble on that, ironically, and it worked out for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that's always fascinated me, but having watched you myself many times, is with the problem you had, how you put in, you had quite a good career at West Ham, as you say. How difficult was that, negating the football against the gambling in the early days?
Football was my release. I think I said it many times now. In many respects, it was my saviour. It was alongside my wife, who I met, my wife now, who I met in 2007, and the children I have. They were the three main things that. This is the reason why I'm still here today. That's the God's honest truth. So, football allowed me to forget about my addiction.
So it's like
I was in.
So it's like your escape. If we just going back a bit, Matty, when did this all start, and how did it escalate? And did it escalate quickly? How did it happen for you?
So I was born in Cornwall, brought up there, beautiful part of the world in Falmouth. Moved to Peterborough when I was 12 and a half, nearly 13 years old. Again, no history of gambling in my family. It happened just after I signed for Spurs. I signed for Spurs in January 2000. Gone from Peterborough to Spurs, Peterborough League Two side, as it is now, and yeah, the bright lights. We watched Liverpool play Spurs at White Hart Lane on New Year's Day. Myself and Simon Davis, who got transferred there, the two of us,
Yeah.
the new bright shining light, so to speak, were on the front of the programme. At the game, we went into the stadium, we're seeing about what the Premier League's all about, etc. And it was a baptism of fire, to say the least. To make that jump from League Two to the Premier League as a young boy as I was 19 years old. No, it wasn't even 19. I was 18, turning 19 in August 2000. Yeah, so we got put up in the Wolverhampton Marriott for a few months until we found the places that we wanted to live, and become really, really bored. That's all I can say, and you probably heard it a lot, but didn't have anything to pass our time. But me and Simon are really keen golfers, and used to play putting competitions in the corridors of Waltham Abbey, banging off doors and that, and people be coming out, being a nuisance. And in the end, we got bored of each other's company as well. And we're still really close now. We're still really close friends, and our families are as well. But when you're, it's a really privileged life, granted. But we were home from training from about 1:30, 2 o'clock, and then you got your time till you go to bed at 9, 10, 11, whatever time you go to bed at night. So I seen Evening Standard was always in the room every day, and I was flicking through it again, really bored. And seen the dog card from Walthamstow Dogs, and that's where it started. I thought, you know what? I didn't even ask Simon to go. I went on my own because we were bored of each other, and went to the Dogs and absolutely loved it. I loved the.
Was your first trip to the Dogs a winning one, Matty? Do you remember?
I don't think I lost any money from what I can recall. Which again is a familiar tale, but I was literally betting in 5-10 pounds, and really liked it. Like I said, really enjoyed it. Then I'd go to Romford. So Walthamstow was Tuesday, Thursday, Romford Monday, Wednesday, Friday. They both on the weekends. So that was my release at that time, and that was where and then it kind of gradually snowballed, and the addiction started to kick in probably just before I joined West Ham.
And when did you recognise it? You're saying that kicked in just before you joined West Ham. At that time, did you think you had a gambling problem, or you just thought you're going through, like we do sometimes, you just think you're going through a bad spell, or a change, or it's not that important thing in your life? Did you realise then it was a problem, do you think?
Probably not. In hindsight, I do now, but not at the time. No. When I joined West Ham, I thought it was fine. I was earning quite a lot of money, or a lot of money. And I thought I was fine with it. But the 20s turns into £20 turns into £40, or £40 turns into £80. And when you've got a means to it, every story's completely relative. But when you've got a means to make those bets even bigger, and you are in the midst of an addiction, the bets are ultimately naturally going to become bigger. That's just the way the addiction works. What it did for me anyway. Everyone's different, but so it probably got, like I said about the eye of the storm, was 2000. And so I started gambling in 2000, 2005, 6, and luckily for me, it came to a head in 2009. But around 2005, 6 was the worst.
Do you think throughout that time, as you were struggling with recognising you're getting you had a gambling problem, did you think it affected your performances on the pitch, or because it was an escape for you, did you think not?
No, it didn't initially. I've got to be honest with you, it didn't. Obviously, like I said, I got Hammer of the Year my first year at West Ham, and I was gambling at the time. I do think it caught up with me. Obviously, the first year we didn't go up through the playoffs. The second year we did. Again, it was a positive season for myself. The next year was the FA Cup final. Again, on the whole, a really positive season. It probably only started affecting my football under Kerbishley 2007, 2008, 2009. That's when it was starting to. That was probably starting to affect it. Albeit it was still my release, going out and training.
How well did you keep it hidden, Matty? You know what we do. Gambling is very much, as we call it, the hidden addiction. We hide it from everybody. Did anybody know in your circle, whether your teammates or friends, family? Did you ever talk to anyone about it, or?
Yeah, I think the people closest to me knew.
Yeah,
But as we know, we're compulsive liars and we're very good at hiding things. And
yeah,
I was definitely good at that, even from my family, who
yeah,
probably at the time weren't seeing me as much. My mum moved up to Peterborough with me, then moved back to Cornwall.
yeah,
Mum and dad are separated, so my dad was up north. My sister, I saw her sporadically again because I was in London. She was still in Peterborough. So closest friends probably knew and did know. But yeah, there was telling times. The people that I spent the most time with would have known definitely. Yeah.
What was the impact when the story broke? Which I'm not sure. Did you out yourself, or were you outed with the when it came out in the press?
I outed myself, but there was stories coming out in the press, and the nonsense stories around I've
Yeah,
seen in William Hill and Loughton picking up a
yeah,
pound off the floor and all that rubbish. And
yeah,
but there was a narrative around, and obviously the fans were talking about it, that I was getting loans off the club, etc. It there was obviously rumours going around that I was
yeah.
gambling.
Sure.
People didn't know to what extent, to be honest with you, but yeah, but it was.
Was it a
It was.
relief for
It
you,
was.
Matty, when it came out?
Sorry.
Was it relief for you when
Yeah,
it
pure
came out?
relief, pure
Yeah,
relief, Ian. Yeah, it really was. The best thing I ever did was come clean to my family.
yeah,
Seeing the effect that it had on them.
yeah,
I didn't. Again, you're selfish. You're a liar, compulsive
yeah,
liar. You only think about you and you only.
yeah,
That was the best thing that ever happened to me. But thankfully for me, they prompted that meeting. I never prompted it.
right,
So how much longer could it have gone on?
sure,
But once they prompted it, thankfully, I did literally lay all my cards on the table and say, talk about the debt I was in, the trouble I was in,
yeah.
and that was a huge relief, definitely.
So it's wonderful that when we hear stories where, despite the impact on the family, they stick with you and they help you through it, which is great. How do you think it actually impacted your mental health at the time?
Yeah, no, it was bad. I'm not going to lie to you. I called people and told people again. I kept a really close circle of friends, so the outside didn't know.
Yeah,
And it's probably a burden on them as well, to be honest with you. Well, it
yeah,
was, without a
yeah,
doubt. And yeah, it really impacted it towards the end. It did. I wasn't in a good place at all, and um, you know, the faults are there. They are there. There's no
yeah,
doubt. If I'm being completely honest with you, they are. Thankfully for me, I had enough good people around me that we come out the other end of it.
yeah. Oh, that's nice to hear. Um, when you came out, obviously it impacted your mental health, it impacted your family. Where did you go, or where did you then think, I need some help, or what was your next step?
Yeah, so I went to Sporting Chancing, which is funded by the PFA, and a
Yeah,
great man called Peter Kay that sadly passed away now, that had addiction problems of his own, and set up alongside Tony Adams a brilliant charitable place. Like I said, that was funded by the PFA, and I went down there once. I went down there twice, and nothing happened. I understood the concept of it and recovery, but I've spoke even to people, whether it be on LinkedIn or random people at West Ham games or walking down the street, and they always can relate to my story. I'm sure they can relate to any story because I'm a little bit more in the public eye. So I'm not now, hopefully, but I was
yeah,
then. They can relate to it, and I was an ex-professional footballer.
sure.
And that's always the question: how did you do it? And how do you maintain that, and how did you stop? It's admitting defeat, which was the hardest thing for me. I'm the worst loser. You can ask my wife and my closest friends. I'm the worst loser in the world, and admitting defeat was really, really soul searching. And why are you admitting defeat? And if you look at the why, then God, it's worth it.
Absolutely.
Um,
I mean, and it's
because
quite ironic, isn't it, that for someone like yourself that hated losing, was very competitive, that you spend most of your gambling career, like everyone does, losing money and chasing the money.
It's so ironic. And do you know what? In the end, it wasn't the did I win or did I lose, getting the buzz out of that. It was actually placing the bet. That's how bad it got for me. I wasn't absolutely buzzing when it won, because I was thinking, well, I'm probably going to do that money back anyway. Yeah. It was having the means to place the bet is where I got the buzz towards the end. And it wasn't great.
So there's two camps. I've worked with a lot of gamblers over the years, and I think there's two camps. I often find that there's people that want to have the label of I've recovered, and people that want to say I'm in recovery and, happy to be in recovery for the rest of your life. Where do you think you fit on that spectrum, Matty?
A really good question. I've never been asked that before. I'll be completely open and honest. I don't go to GA meetings anymore, and I did for 8 years. And I'm a big believer. I don't know if people have read the book, The Chimp Paradox. It's maybe the chimp playing games with me, but I'm very conscious of it. I'm very aware of it. I'm very aware that it could happen at any moment. I'm not naive enough to know that, but I haven't. So I'm 15 years recovered now. I've not been.
And do you know, Matt, and that's why I'm asked the question.
Yeah.
Because you use it's a very similar language to I use. You say you're 15 years recovered, that's fine because you've managed it, you've been through it, you've addressed everything you need to address, and it is okay to be in that camp of recovered. And some people need to be in the camp of recovery. But I was just interested in that.
Yeah, no, it's really important. I think it's a really interesting topic, and I just think you need to be aware. That's the biggest thing. Even if you, you need to be aware that it could happen one day. If you're not looking after yourself right, if you're not living right, if you've not got the right people around you, it could happen. I think.
And I'm sure the people close to you, knowing you like they do, I'm sure they would spot the signs pretty quickly. They wouldn't take any more of your crap anymore, and they'd probably know the stories. So it would be very difficult to go again totally.
Yeah, hopefully. That's true. That is true.
How do you find it working in the football industry now, Matty?
In terms of,
you were in it, you were out of it, you came out. What's it like being back in it?
It's another good question. Football is all I know, to be honest with you. I could go and get requalified in something else. I did well at school in my GCSEs, but then I was chucked into a first team at 15 years old. Lived a very different life. I've gone through all my badges. I'm a pro licensed coach, and I actually love coaching on the grass and helping players get better. That's why I'm in my current role now at Southampton with the 21s. Football's a very different place now to what it was when I started out, which is natural. Everything evolves. There's gambling everywhere, which to me isn't triggering, like to some other people is. And I've been asked the question many times of, you're involved in football, but the amount of gambling adverts, if you're watching the game on TV, it's every advert and stuff like that. And I completely get where they're coming from. It's too much. And gambler ware's all coming out now and take a break and all that. But I still don't think they're doing nowhere near enough. They're just doing the bare minimum that they feel they need to, these gambling companies. But I love football. Football's my life. Football's always been my life.
That's great. That's it's good because you're doing what you love. You're still doing what you love. You had your hiccups. You've recovered. You're very aware that it still could be around the corner, but hopefully not for you. What advice would you give to people listening to this now, Matt, who are struggling with a gambling addiction? What would you say to them if they were, if they were here?
Yeah, the same thing I'd always say, and I'd say it to my former self at the same stage if I was in the midst of it, is that unfortunately with this, from my experiences with this addiction, you'll only know when the time's right. People can look you till they're blue in the face and say, stop, stop, stop. It's down to yourself and you solely. You could have 1 million people, 100 people around a table saying to you to stop and saying this and saying that. Thankfully, I think subconsciously I was ready to stop at that time. And I think my family, like I said, just prompted it. But it's got to come from yourself, and it's the hardest thing to do in the world. It's the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Is stop gambling. And you
It
think
sounds
it's
like one of the best
impossible.
things as well, Matty.
No, it's the hardest, but the best thing I ever did, because I wouldn't be here anymore. So, and that is
Yeah.
the God's honest truth. But it's you just build this in your head again. The chimp paradox, saying as well that it gets it built up bigger. It's tough, don't get me wrong, but making that first leap and a day at a time with something that a day at a time when I first stepped into GA was something so simple, but something that broke it down in my head.
Yeah.
So much. That simplicity of today, I'm not going to have a bet when you wake up. It's just, it was huge for me. It really was. It really was huge. And that you know, as we all know, that day rolls into a week and so on and so forth. So it's got to come from yourself. That's all I could say, really.
I mean, where you said quite a few times that had you not come out at the time you did and things hadn't gone the way they planned, you wouldn't be here. How was it feeling that low? And did you ever have not opportunities, but did you ever feel like you're going to take your own life?
I didn't actually. No, I had thoughts about that.
Right. So it's thoughts rather than plans.
Yeah, never got anywhere near it. No, and that's me being honest. And
yeah,
I had 2 children at the time, 2 girls. I've got 4 girls now. I'm like I said, the 3 big reasons. I've got my wife, and who I met in 2007. I couldn't do that. But I think when you're at your ultimate lowest ebb, those thoughts do creep in. It's not just as a get out. It's sometimes you feel like your closest and nearest and dearest would be better off without you as well. That's how much you degrade yourself. It's the thoughts that go through your mind at the time. So it's difficult to navigate your way through. You need help. You need help from real experienced people, whether it be GA, whatever that looks like, and you need help from your family as well.
And I think that's a really great place to end, Matty, because I think it is a great message to give out to everybody that whatever the help looks like, whether it be through our sort of services, the National Gambling Support Network, GA, whatever it is, or use all of them, the most important thing is don't suffer in silence and get out there. So thanks very much for being so honest here, Matty. That's really been appreciated. Now going to bring in George Parris, who actually works for Break Even and had a career in football. And it'd just be interesting to talk to you both about the differences, etc. So, George, your football career was sort of 1982 to 1997. Matty's yours was 2000 to 2010, 2014-ish. You both played at West Ham. So what was the highlight of your careers? First, you, George.
I suppose highlight for me was I was involved in that squad that finished third in the Premiership as such, 85, 86. So certainly from a club point of view, lucky enough to become runner-up Hammer of the Year in 1991. So I suppose on an individual basis, that those most probably be the 2 highlights.
Matty?
Yeah, my first year, when I joined in 2003, Hammer of the Year, unbelievable for me. You look at the names on that trophy, so outstanding. That would be 1 FA Cup final, albeit we lost to Liverpool, heartbreaking. But that another highlight. Being at the Millennium Stadium for 3 years in a row, 2 playoff finals and an FA Cup final, and a trip in Europe was really good.
What do you think, Matty, is the difference between what gambling looks like now and in your time to what it probably was in George's time? What do you think it looks like now to what it started off when you started gambling?
I'd probably say it wouldn't look loads different from my personal point of view in terms of my gambling experience.
Yeah.
So I was at Walthamstow Dogs. I don't know George's story, but the Walthamstow Dogs, they've been there for years. I was in the bookies after training. I think gambling looks a lot different now in terms of the online access you can get in your bet builders. George might say something completely different. Obviously, I think the money would be a big thing. And I spoke about that earlier, about it's a means to an end. If I wasn't earning what I was earning at West Ham and Stoke later on, then probably the debt I got into wouldn't have been as big. But it's all relative, I think. And but the experiences I had were, I loved the old school. So I loved the dogs. I loved going to the horses. I loved playing poker and snooker halls with people I shouldn't be playing poker with, etc. And that's just the way that I gambled, you know. So,
George, what about you?
Well, I suppose similar in some respects. I think certainly in my day, and it might be even more difficult now, but we had easy access to go into bookmakers and used to go in the bookies after training. And as Matty said, that there certainly used to go on race venues, and certainly the Wolverhampton Romford Dogs. So I think that's still going on maybe now, but maybe not to the same extent because of how the Premiership is now, and obviously the people playing in it. I don't think they'll be able to waltz up and go into Romford Dogs and be there all afternoon. But yeah, certainly for me, it was all around going into the bookies and being very, very, very active there, sometimes from morning to night time. So
it's quite interesting, really, isn't it? Because you two guys, very similar pattern, you know, old school gambling, we'd probably call it now, the Dogs. I mean, I think a lot of them are shut down. I don't know how many grandstands are actually open. But for you guys, you actually had to go into a betting shop, you had to go to a racetrack, or you had to go to the Dogs. Whereas the gamblers in football today are doing it literally hidden, either on a phone or on a computer. I mean, that's very different to the way you guys would have gambled, isn't it? I mean, Matty, online gambling wasn't around when you were gambling, was it?
No, it wasn't. But I feel like I've seen the start of it, if I'm being completely honest. I remember that at West Ham at Chadwell Heath, we obviously word gets about, and we had quite a keen poker score, etc. With myself, Teddy, Yossi Benayoun was a really, really keen gambler, and a few others would dip in and out. And Victor Chandler come in, and they give us loyalty cards where you could bet with them online or through a phone.
Right.
And they would give you any credit up to whatever you wanted, as long as it was settled at the end of the month.
Yeah.
Or if you were winning, they'd come in at the end of the month and pay you in cash or whatever. And I felt like, for me now, looking back on that, and I've spoken about it before, that's exploitation. I don't care what no one says.
Yeah.
And how they got away with that at that time is quite scary.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I don't think they get away with that now, to be honest, or maybe I'm wrong, but I'd like to think they wouldn't. But it was, we were right at the start of it. I still could go in the bookies and tap my card, my debit card or whatever, and place a bet that way as well. It wasn't just all cash.
Yeah, well, thank God that's changed. I mean, the one thing they have changed is you can't bet on credit cards, which is obviously a good thing for, you know, people. So would you, if I said it's probably easier to become a compulsive addicted gambler today than it was in your day, because both of you had to work on it, didn't you, to make sure that you still had to find time to go into the betting shop? I know you'd get back early from training and stuff like that, but were either of you ever worried about being seen in the shops, being seen at the races, or George?
I can only talk for myself. No, I had no problems. As I say, I used to be a regular in quite a few of the bookies that I was about, whether it was in, obviously, when I was at West Ham, or whether in Birmingham, in Solihull, or even when I came down to Brighton. I used to live a couple of doors away from a bookmaker, so I was always in there. I think if there was a bed in there, I most probably would have slept in there overnight as well, to be honest. So yeah, it was really easy accessible.
It's amazing how times are changing with social media and the press. If that was happening today, that would be the headlines in every social media, context, in every paper. It's just changed so drastically, hasn't it?
Yeah, it has. It really has. And I was the same as George. I didn't care who saw me in the bookmakers when I was there, whether it be in Chadwell Heath or down in Romford or wherever it was. It was only towards the end of my time at Stoke when there was a lot of noise around that I had a problem just before I stopped in September 2009. That was people started taking pictures in the shops, etc. And that's when, again, the social media side come into it and all of that.
Match fixing, betting on your own football team, or betting against your own football team, or betting on any football team when you're a player, seems to be rife now. Is it rife now, or with people just getting found out more? And what's your opinion on that, guys?
For me, I never bet against my team ever. I did occasionally back myself to score the first goal, but knowing my goal scoring prowess, that didn't really come in too often. So for me personally, no, I didn't really get involved with that side of betting.
Yeah, exactly the same for me, but never bet against my team. And I do think there's more means now, more powers that be, more markets, where that can be manipulated in some way, shape or form. But that never, I had enough problems. I was doing enough. I was betting on basketball in the States at 4 a.m. So that was the least of my problems.
Yeah. At the start of the 26-27 season, they're going to ban the advertising on the front of the shirt. So West Ham won't have Betway on there anymore, not on the front of their shirts. What do you guys got? Any opinions on that?
I think for me that is a good thing. As I say, I think as long as people can bet, then that's fine. The problem is the people who have the problem. So that would be the same as obviously when they used to have everything with beer and stuff on the front of their shirts, wasn't it? If you haven't got that problem with drink, then it's all well and good, isn't it? But for those who have it, it's in their faces 24, well, not even 24/7, but even when they go to a football match, it's there and it's part of the club sponsors as well. So yeah, it's got to be a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. It's just life, isn't it? You know, you're never going to get away from it. You know, you've got Cheltenham coming up. It's probably one of when I was early days after 2009, that was really triggering for me, Cheltenham. I found it really tough. But there's, don't know how many thousand people there every single day having a time of their lives. Probably quite a large percentage do have problems. Let's be completely honest. But there's also a large percentage that don't have no problems whatsoever. So why should they suffer? And it's the same with the drink. Exactly that. So I don't think the shirt sponsors stop nothing. I think in terms of TV, in terms of commercials, ad breaks, I think that can be reduced, because that's constantly in your face. I don't think you notice it on a match day. If you're going out to watch West Ham United play at the London Stadium, you're not looking at their shirt, you're looking at the play, you're looking at the game, you're looking at how the team's doing. It's more what you're seeing on your TV screen for me, or on your mobile phone.
What I want to finish up with, guys, is education, especially within the Premier League, in fact, all the leagues, from the football clubs, about educating players, staff on the problem that gambling can lead to, or just make them aware that gambling is not always what it's portrayed to be. What do you feel should be done, or is there anything being done that you know about within the clubs?
I think there's more being done now than there ever has been. I think that the education side of things is quite hot, isn't it, in quite a lot of the football clubs, which it should be, just to get that education. And as we know, with the same with anything, that some people will grasp that education and take it on board, and some will not, and carry on perhaps having issues with, as I say, whether it's gambling or whether it's drink, etc. So I think it's certainly a lot better than it was in my day, for sure.
Yeah, completely agree. It's definitely more advanced. I still don't think it's enough. I still think you need real life experiences from people or players, if it's in a football environment, whatever environment it's in, that have lived it, and how they've lived it and what they've done. I've been asked, for example, Thursday afternoon, I'm going to do a talk with a 21s group at Southampton, and there's talk about my story. I'm quite nervous about it, to be honest with you. But there may be one or two in there that they're earning a lot of money. These lads, honest, some of the money they're earning is crazy.
Yeah.
And there may be one or two of them in there that maybe have an issue. So hopefully my story can relate to my early days and when I started out at Tottenham, etc., in 2000, and how it crept up on me. And I think that's all we can do. I think more awareness will come as we move forward.
And I totally get your point, Matty. I think lived experience within the football clubs really needs to have a voice. And it's great that what you're doing on Thursday. Let's hope, maybe people listening to this will realise it's a really good thing to involve players like yourself and George going to talking to these players to make them aware. But it must be quite tough for you Thursday. I know you said you're a bit nervous because they see the light they're seeing you in is in your job that you're doing for them.
Yeah, they see me as a coach on the field. That you need to lead a session. You need to be quite authoritative at times. I do have a soft side to me as well, believe it or not. But I'm going to be vulnerable on Thursday, and whenever I talk about it, especially in front of a group of players that I'm coaching, it's never easy. But I do think it's a good thing. I think it's a really good thing.
Oh yeah, it sounds like a wonderful thing. You spoke about not enough is being done to protect people, not just footballers. What do you think, if you were in charge of DCMS, both of you tomorrow, what would be a couple of things that you would change now to help people that may develop or have a gambling problem?
I think it's maybe more acceptable if you have got a gambling problem now that you can actually source somewhere or someone. I think it's a little bit easier than it was 20, 30, maybe even 40 years ago. So that's got to be a good thing. And I think people haven't got an issue with gambling. I think they're becoming more aware of their peers and other people around them. I think that it's going the right way, and long may that continue.
Yeah, picking up what you said, George, it's certainly more vogue, isn't it, in today's world, that it's okay to come out, have a problem and get the help and hopefully be in recovery, be recovered and be okay. I guess in your day, Matty, it wasn't like that, was it?
No, it wasn't. It was probably seen as a weakness in some respects. I got plenty of stick off a number of fans is like, lend me 20 quid and all that jazz. I just think the education around it needs to continue. I think it's out there now, and it really is improving. But I still go back to and everyone, if they don't go back to that in terms of if they don't have a problem, can have a bet freely. Of course they can. I've got no issue with that whatsoever. But I feel like the gambling companies need to do more as well. I feel like what they're doing at the minute is bare minimum for me. And they say the things on the adverts around gamble aware, and if gets too much, stop, and etc. etc. I still think there's more to be done from them as well, because they're multi-million, some of them billion-pound industries that they can help out as well.
Right. To finish up with, I'd like you to just give me one thing that you'd like to see in gambling that would help people in recovery. So what would you basically recommend if somebody's listening to this that thinks they're on the edge of a problem, they know they're gambling too much, they know they're losing too much? What would your one bit of advice be to them?
I think for me it would be to either find someone who they feel safe enough to tell, or if they can't even find that individual, then if they can find it, whether it's online or even on TV, etc., just to pick up a phone and do that call. It doesn't take hope. Some of those calls are free as well, so just pick it up, try and then they can find out whether or not they feel that they've got an issue.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing for me. I completely agree with George. It's speaking. It doesn't have to be through your voice. You can do it online now as well, through messages. And like I said, I've had, and I'm sure you have, George, and yourself, Ian, I've had so many messages, whether it be on LinkedIn or other terms of communication, Instagram, etc., where people have reached out, and I've made sure I've applied to every single one of them because I've been where they've been. So if you haven't got that close support network around you, there is other people out there that have gone through what you've gone through in terms of the initial stage, like you just said, or have gone through what you've gone through and you're in the midst of a real bad addiction. So, yeah, that would be the advice that I'd give.
Matty, George, two West Ham legends, on behalf of Break Even, thanks very much for being so open and honest. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Ian.
Thank you. Cheers.
If you or someone you know is affected by gambling-related harm, please call us on 01273 833 722 or visit our website www.breakeven.org.uk. Alternatively, please call the National Gambling Helpline on 0808 8020 133. Please ensure to like and subscribe to all our social media channels and keep this message out there. Thank you.